other thing is so amazing about both of their corpuses is that they're able to capture a kind of everyday people essence of Black lived experience and creative expression and improvisation in living, without being condescending, without looking like they are trying to model something that they don't know about, right? Or to sort of get down with the people. It feels so organic and so real. And they're able to capture the spirit behind it and the political significance and the emotional significance of everyday culture. And so they share that, I think, very significantly, right, in the way they write and the way they capture and move across areas of life. They're both keen observers. That gift, I think, is partly what accounts for a kind of white liberal embrace, right? That it feels easy to read them. It feels easy to understand what they're doing, when in fact they're quite difficult to understand. And the way they were misunderstood, right? And what it's almost as if you're only talking to the community, right, they'd be perfect voices. But as soon as other people take it up, if they're not well versed in what the stories are really about and what the political disposition is really about, then it can easily be fed into a mainstream fantasy. That's what happened to Real Cool, right? As if it was somehow a critique of 7-year-old boys playing pool and, dying soon, as if it's a dysfunctional Black space, right, that she's narrating, which isn't at all what she was doing. And the same holds true for Hansberry's Raisin in the Sun, which gets understood as a swan song for integration. I still to this day cannot understand how at the end of that play, anybody paying any attention whatsoever, even when P. Diddy's in the doggone thing.
I remember that.
How could they possibly misunderstand that when Mama grabs her plant, that they're supposed to be lucky moving on up? This is supposed to be, a happy, like you're going to go to a place where they're about to pay you to not move in an all-white neighborhood in the 1950s? God, I mean, so how right? How not knowing can you be?
That's true. There's a line in that play you recalled as a guy who was the Norwegian, the Nigerian brother. The African presence is always very strong in Lorraine Hansberry because she had a global perspective. We think Imani Perry's recent book on this points this out. But there's crucial line where he said, there's something wrong with the civilization and a situation in which dreams depend on the death. Because remember, it's the death of old man Walter that generates the whole story, $10,000.
That's right.
And it's the death of little Claude. In some ways, that was the catalyst for old man Walter dying. When little Claude died, the little baby that he and Mama had together. Mm-hmm. And so from the very beginning, you're getting a book about death at its deepest level. And then the moment when Mama walks in and said, we ain't never been a people, 5 generations of slaves and sharecroppers who other people told us that we were so less than them that we accepted their definition of reality. And therefore we become the living dead. And Walter's talking about money, money, money. She said, we used to talk about freedom. Now all y'all talk about is money. Oh, so you got another kind of level of death that Lorraine's dealing with in terms of how these folk who have been physically murdered, maimed, killed, still dish out children and cousins and aunts and uncles and friends who are still so much alive, but then now they've gone to the city and lo and behold, their souls are dying. And she already saw this, 1959. And then the moment that you accent in your essay about measure him right. Ooh,
right.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the climax of the whole play. That is the turning point that reveals what she's really trying to deal with, which is until you, I mean, and of course, it's the hardest to love each other when you are on the cusp of giving up all that you need and to survive in your community, right? That moment where the buy-in makes the most sense. Why not give up? Why not, in this case, take the money? Right. I mean, and of course, are we not dealing with this today? right? I mean,
Oh,
she's
yes.
dealing, I mean, we're dealing with this today, the darlings of the liberal establishment, right? Determining how the conversation on racism should go, what it should look like, what it should say, what it can't say. Are we not dealing with this in terms of Black celebrity and in terms of the music industry and the control over narratives and the effort to make it look like we're in fact, we're not shucking and jiving the way that scene where Walter grovels to pretend like he's just going to be, you know, an old shuffling Uncle Tom. Right now, we have a whole different level of performance that involves the very same calculation. What am I going to get paid to do? I can't change this system. Dignity's not going to get me anywhere. Is the story? That's what Walter was basically arguing.
That's
And,
right.
you know, let me just take the money
Right.
that I can take. And you, on the one hand, you can't really argue with Walter. And that's what's so beautiful about how Hansberry handles it. Because there's no giving up on Walter. There's no outrage. How dare you? It's really, we understand this, right? This is what we've been fighting against, because this is what spiritual death looks like after, you know, that goes on while you're trying to kill the actual physical body.
That is so true. That is so very, very true. And you know, James Baldwin, in his essay on Sweet Lorraine, he says the beautiful thing about Lorraine is that she never confused making it with keeping the faith.
Right.
And making it is the young Walter before his transformation, who's obsessed with money, power, status, spectacle. He is very much a product of what we would call today the culture of superficial spectacle. Right. We understand why he wants money, but he's thrown himself so much into money that he's no longer able to keep the faith. By keeping the faith, we're not talking about anything religious, dogmatic, or doctrinaire here. We're simply talking about not selling your soul for a mess of pottage. Mm-hmm. You see,
right?
Not selling out and giving up your integrity, honesty, and decency in order just to have prosperity.
Right, right. And his vulnerability is also the vulnerability of a deprived, underfunded Black patriarchal masculinity, right? He wants to be the head of his household, and white supremacy and its distinctive attack on Black men, because they're the biggest threat in a white supremacist patriarchal universe. And I say universe intentionally.
That's right.
You know, and so his whole desire to make it is to do the best you can do with that longing, with that goal, with that aspiration. And of course, all the women around him don't even want that for him in particular. They believe in the strength that he's bringing, right? Regardless of that. But that's the seduction of the power of these kinds of expectations that society provides to us. So our failings become personal, not situational, not structural, not created by the environment that we're in, but in fact personal. So he takes it all very personally, what he can't do for his son, what he can't afford to do. But there's another thing that happens in Hansberry that when I was writing the essay you referred to, I found a piece by a woman whose last name I think is Lippett. And what she had copies of the movie version script that Hansberry wrote when the play was going to become a film on Columbia Pictures. And Hansberry went out of her way to try to make more visible the texture of Black suffering that she felt many white fans and critics did not see in the play, right? So they imagined this as a happy ending, right? She thought, let me explain to you how unhappy this ending is. And let me explain to you about the real context. So she wrote in on the movie script all of this texture and detail, close-ups of Black hands, close-ups of African Americans getting bad fruit and vegetables in their neighborhoods that were more expensive. She really dovetailed really systemic racism and the way it played out in transportation, in service jobs, and so on and so forth, and the degradation really that was required. And the amazing thing was in the margins of the articles and scripts, they basically just X'd it out and said, too much blackness, unnecessary. They literally erased Hansberry's effort to put in material to make the argument that they refused to see the first time she made it.
Wow.
And I mean, it was...
That's part of the history of much of Hollywood right there.
Yeah.
Too much black humanity.
Too much. Let it go. We don't need
black
it.
Love.